Good evening. We would like to acknowledge Torah Anytime, who are providing such beautiful access worldwide to be Mekadesh Shem Shemayim Barabim. I must apologize to you this evening. My technician who put away the apparatus with the microphone and everything can't find it. We don't know who touched it, where it went. We're going to immediately order another one and return to the clarity that the microphone provides, Be'ezus Hashem, for our next shiur. Hopefully this will never happen again. I want to say that this Shabbos, Parshas Nitzavim, is Shabbos Mevorachim, because the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh, and Tishrei is Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, and it is also the Mevorachim for the entire year, because Rosh Chodesh Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah. And we know that we as a Klal Yisrael are Mevorach the Chodesh. We have the power to empower the entire month, each and every hour, each and every day. And we come the Shabbos before because Shabbos is mashpia on the entire week. And if in that week comes out Rosh Chodesh or whatever, a Yom Tiv, it draws its koyach from the preceding Shabbos. And this year, Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbos, the first day, but that's what we do in any month. If Rosh Chodesh is Shabbos, we have Shabbos Mevorachim, the Shabbos before. Now, does that mean that we are left without the Klal Yisrael bracha, which has the power and the ability to really lift up the upcoming month? So the answer is no, because the Medrash says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself comes, since Rosh Chodesh Tishrei includes Rosh Hashanah, which has an effect on each and every day of the upcoming year. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes on himself to be Mevorach the Chodesh with the entire power and the ability to imbue and instill the flow of bracha for each and every day of the upcoming year. And we know that the Parsha always before Rosh Hashanah is Nitzavim. Sometimes it's Nitzavim and Vayelech, like this year, but sometimes it's Nitzavim, Rosh Hashanah, and Vayelech, the Shabbos Shuvah. But Nitzavim is always the Shabbos that is mashpia on Rosh Hashanah. And indeed, the Gemara says, Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem. Hayom, every place in the Torah, the Gemara says, that the word Hayom is employed, it's a reference to Rosh Hashanah. Wherever you find the word Hayom. And it says that after Nitzavim, after Kisavo, where you have the Tochacha, and Moshe Rabbeinu so strongly and emphasized each and every word of the Tochacha, Rashi says in our opening of our Sedra that Horiku Penehem Shel Yisrael, that their faces became green they became shocked, they became despondent, and they said, how are we going to survive? When they got done hearing the 98 klolos for a list of things as human beings, some people fall into this, some fall into that. But after all of these klolos, they were speechless, they were devastated. So says the Medrash. So Moshe Rabbeinu continued and said, Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem Roshechem Shiftechem Ziknechem Meishoye Veimecha Ad Meichoite Veitzecha Ad Shoye Veimecha. Don't be so overwhelmed, Moshe Rabbeinu said to them. He said, you indeed, I just got done saying the Toichacha, but on the other hand, you're all still here. You did so many things which were beautiful, but you did so many things which you tripped. And they were bad, they were wrong. But nevertheless, you survived, you're here. So don't be so despondent. Now, the Kli Yakar and others asked the question that if the purpose of the Toichacha was to instill the fear of God, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, into each and every member of Klal Yisrael, so first he hit him over the head with the Toichacha, and that was to instill Yiras Shamayim. But then he came back and said, don't be so overwhelmed, calm down, you're still alive, you're still all here. Why would he dilute so strongly the words of the Toichacha, which had its purpose to be able to bring down the level of fright of Klal Yisrael? Now, there are many brachas that came out from this discussion, because it says in Chazal that Moshe Rabbeinu immediately was misaken that every day Klal Yisrael should make 100 brachas. And for some reason, it withered away. And when David HaMelech went to war, he lost in one of the battles 100 people. And he said, this happened because we were supposed to be making 100 brachas a day, and it somehow disappeared from the agenda and the itinerary of Klal Yisrael. So he reinstituted the 100 brachas a day because of the 100 men that he lost. And the purpose of reinstating it was because when Moshe Rabbeinu was misaken, the 100 brachas, it was Maisa Ovo Simen Lebanim, that every halacha or every takana or gezerah that our Chazal make has a far-reaching effect above the surface view of what seems to be the basis for that halacha, or that gezerah, or that takana. So Moshe Rabbeinu saw, because there were really 100 klolos, it wasn't 99. But the difference is that the 98 were very, very clear. You do this, this is the subsequent problem that you're going to face because of this. But when it came to the last two, he didn't say any correlation of punishment, reward. Do not do it refrain, or else he just made mention by the word holy and by the word makos that there were two more, but without any subsequent result of their bad act. So we refer to it on one end as 98. Some places refer to it as 100 minus 2, which we understand means 98. But there's 100. There's still the 2 above that. Now, we in the realm of active human beings each and every day of our lives succeed, Baruch Hashem, with most of our mission in life. But there is no challenge that is put forth to a person that is not with Hashgacha Pratis, with the intention of the person being given an opportunity to make a choice. We're not forced to do anything. But like the Arizal says, that I mentioned to you many weeks ago, I think it was Parshas Rei that talks about tzedakah, that anyone that comes up to you for tzedakah, it's a sign, either that the person is coming to you and you're being tested with aser to aser, that you have a mitzvah of tzedakah, and all of the ripple effect of tzedakah, which are magnificent and multiple, so many effects because of tzedakah. So says the Arizal that if somebody confronts you, then it may be a sign that you're being tested. Like every day of our lives, we're tested on everything we do. A person not feeling well, who has to go to shul? So you'll skip the minyan, you'll dip. But he says that by tzedakah specifically, if somebody asked you for tzedakah and you didn't give even the quarter or dollar, then they come back in a Gilgal and they meet you again. And you're re-given, you're reliving the opportunity to be able to give that tzedakah. And if you fail, you could come back a third time. Reincarnation, when a person comes back through Gilgulim and other things. So the point being that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he gave the 100, he instituted right away the 100 brachas, because through the 100 brachas a day that we say, it's a protective shield for falling into each bracha, what it corresponds to, of these 100 items, and to be able to salvage and to save the person and prevent him and convince him in his psyche not to do it, and how to pull him out. How do we have the crane strong enough to pull us out from the temptation? It's the 100 brachas each and every day. But the answer to the question as to if it was meant to shake up the people, so why all the consolation to calm them down? You diluted the effect of wanting that strong Yerushalayim. And the answer is that, of course, he wanted it to remain effective, that the Yidden should be imbued and inspired and uplifted into the realm of Yerushalayim. But he did not want hopelessness. You see, a Yid is not allowed to ever be hopeless. We never have the category of hopelessness on our list. And that, the Meforshim say in the Medrash, is why Yehudim are called Yehudim. Yidden, Jews. Jew is Yid. And where does it come from? It comes from the name Yehuda. Now, what was so special about Yehuda? I mean, we could have been called Reuvenim. We could have been called Shimonim, from Reuven and Shimon. Why Yehuda? So they say because when they were in Mitzrayim, and when in the story of meeting Yosef, who was incognito, they didn't realize it was Yosef. But when they found the silver goblet amongst the packaged items on their donkey, they threw up their hands. They said, "We see, we are doomed for destruction." It was at that point, it was the breaking point. That they were going back, they were begging, they were explaining, they were telling the truth. Shimon was now put into jail, Binyamin's going to be in trouble, and we can't live through this. They threw up their hands, we give up. And it was Yehuda who stepped forward. Vayigash Elov Yehuda, Vayomer Biadoni, and he began speaking to Yosef. Now the Medrash is very picturesque because it says that Yehuda was so mighty that he took Naphtali, his brother, and said, "Go check out the provinces of Mitzrayim and come back and tell me how many there are, like counties." And he came back and he said, "There are 12. So he said, "Perfect. I'll take on 3, and the other 8 brothers will take on 3, and the other 9 brothers will take on the other 9. And we're going to destroy Mitzrayim. The only thing is that we must do it, and no one could say no, because we must come home with Binyamin. We cannot do this. That's unquestionable, to do this to Yaakov Avinu." So the Medrash says because Yehuda didn't throw up his hands and concede to the realm of hopelessness, he was given the gift that every Yid who would come in future generations to be part of Klal Yisrael would be called Yehudi, a member of Yehuda's people, meaning the Jewish nation, because of that one specific item that underscored what he stood for most and foremost, to never ever give up. A Yid doesn't give up. Now, we know that when Yehoshua sent spies, when they were ready to go into Eretz Yisrael, he sent 2 spies, which many say was Kalev and Pinchas, and they ended up spying out the land, but people noticed strangered, and it got back to the king, and he sent out, he dispatched a group of soldiers to catch them and kill them. Now they wound up in the house of Rachav HaZoina. Now some in the Gemara say that the word Zoina means mazon, food, that she used to have an inn, and people who were traveling came to a spot that they were able to eat and drink. Her house was a house that provided food and drinks to the people who wanted them. But more commonly, Rachav HaZoina means Zoina, the Lashon of ill repute. She did not behave properly, and it says that for over 50 years that she had a house of ill repute, and there was no king or prince who had not traveled to Yericho to be with her. So it was so popular of what was going on, the activity of that house. So Rav Schwab, Zichrono Livrocha, used to have a favorite vort that I heard him on a few occasions say the vort. And that was that Rachav's house was in the wall of the city, and she had an entrance inside the city to her house, but she also had an exit which was out of her house, meaning the back, the wall of the city, which was the back wall of her house. People were able to come and to go. And as a matter of fact, when the army got close, so Rachav said to Pinchas and Kalev, promise me that you will, when you come in to attack Eretz Yisrael, that you will save me and my family. And they promised her, either you save us, and she first hid them, and then they got out through the chalon, the window in the back of the back wall, the rope, the chevel, and the choima, the actual wall. And Rav Schwab asked, why did they need this back entrance? The whole world knew. She was doing this for 50 years. The whole world knew what was going on. Going out with a chevel, with a rope, out a window is like you're trying to hide. I mean, who are you hiding from? Anyone that saw you inside or outside knew what your machshava was. So why go out the back entrance and have to slide down a rope along the wall? So he answered and said, because there were still some people that had a modicum, an iota of humility, decency, and dignity, and self-respect. And yes, they had the taiva, and they were there for the taiva. But there was that inch of guilt. There was that drop of some goodness of edelkeit or dignity or self-respect that they wanted to preserve. So said Rav Schwab. And unfortunately, since Rav Schwab lived 25 years ago, or how many years it was, excuse me, take a look what's going on in the world. Is there a drop of self-respect still left? When today, September 5th, in Sacramento, in California, they are working on a bill which they have enough votes to pass it, that they want to decriminalize anyone who does shoplifting and make a crime, a criminal out of the person who may be working in the store and sees someone loading up a bag with items and then goes over to the person and says, please put those items back or don't do what you're in the middle of doing. They arrest him, not the criminal. Now, as I'm saying it, some of you may feel impossible. That can't be such a thing. But it is. And it's happening today. I don't know if it'll end up being passed today, but the votes were there. Now, when you teach a child that somebody who dropped a penny and you see it from 5 feet away, and the person who dropped the penny didn't notice he dropped the penny, we are mechuyev to run up and pick up the penny and say you dropped something. because somebody else's possession, his money or his possession, is above and beyond reproach, above and beyond touching, taking in any which way. And if you know the person is, besides the Kiddush Hashem that the Yid would make, but the mere fact that he is going up and picking it up, it teaches the child the worthiness and the position of property in this world. When a Senate and an Assembly of California, should they pass this shameful law, who turns the criminal into the innocent victim, and the man who's trying to prevent it somehow, some way, the criminal, and there is a punishment, the man will be arrested. And you can go check it out in some media connection, because I too thought this is impossible. When does this end? The craziness, the liberalism, the nonsense. So Rav Schwab said that drop of dignity, with even the public view of them going for the Aveira, at least prevented them from wanting to walk in the front door in front of the entire world. But to go the back way, to come in and out from the rope and from the window, rather than to have this public announcement. Now, Rochav, obviously, when she did tshuva, she became the wife of Yehoshua. Yehoshua married her. They only had 2 daughters, no sons, but the Gemara says from those 2 daughters, their children and who they married became Kohanim Gedolim, 8 of them, of the descendants of Rochav and Yehoshua. So we see a lesson for Rosh Hashanah, that a person could come back. I mean, somebody would have written her off and put her the last one in the world that's capable of doing tshuva. It didn't happen once to her or 50 years this was going on. No king, no prince in the world had not been with her. But she was capable of not only turning around and changing, but changing and becoming much, much better. Rav Hutner Zichron Levracha used to say a person doesn't have to become better Rosh Hashanah. He has to change himself. Because if he looks back at the Rosh Hashanah before, and he takes a look at what he promised last year, what he promised the year before that, and the year before that, there may have been a dab and a touch of becoming better, but did he become a changed person? Let's not forget the Meforshim who say when Eliezer got to Besuel and Lavan, what was his first statement there? His first statement was, Eved Avraham Anochi. And the Meforshim say, because if you ask anyone, what does that mean? It means when he came in, he introduced himself that he was the Eved of Avram. The whole world knew about Avram, and he was introducing himself. But many Meforshim say he was not introducing himself to them. He was introducing himself to himself. That means a person has to stop for a moment and redefine what is he doing in this world. Who are you? Like Hashem asked Adam, Ayeka, where are you? And the Balkany talked about it. He asked, in essence, who are you and what are you made up of? Redefine yourself, reflect, and before you go out on the mission of the day or the week or the month, who are you? You're a Yid with a neshama that is pure. You know, it says in Zohar HaKadosh that when somebody does an Aveira, there are 5 different compartments. There's Nefesh, there's Ruach, there's Neshama, there's Chaye, and Yechida. And Yom Kippur, as a matter of fact, corresponds to all 5 of those, and that's why we have 5 tefillas. Ma'ariv, Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, and Ne'ilah. And they correspond to those 5 areas. But says the Zohar HaKadosh that there's no such thing as the worst Aveira affecting his Ruach, his Neshama, his Chaya, and his Yechida. It only affects his Nefesh, the lowest level. And that's why the Pasuk says, V'nichrasa ha-nefesh hahi. It always refers to the Nefesh. It does never say ha-neshama hahi, because the Neshama comes down perfectly pure, and it goes back perfectly pure. It's the Nefesh that Nebuch suffers and has all of the effects of the Aveira. So when Avram Avinu sent Eliezer, he was just about to start talking, and he knew that this was a house of deceit and lying. He knew where it was, but it was family. So the DNA is what Avram Avinu wanted, because where he lived in Eretz Yisrael, the people there were much better than his family that he left over in Haran. And why would he want to take family of cheaters and liars? Because he knew the essence, the DNA was good. So when Eliezer got there, he said, 1 second, let me just reset my dial before I begin this mission, right in front of them. And he called out to himself, according to some of the Meforshim, Eved Avram Anochi, I, Eliezer, should not forget. And I cannot step over the line 1 inch in who I am, who I represent, what my essence is in my mission, and not to deviate and get swayed 1/2 of an inch in place or out of place in any which way. So there is a question that why isn't Yom Kippur before Rosh Hashanah? I mean, the bottom line is this. Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Hadin. And it's not a Sveika D'Yoima like Pesach or Shavuos in Eretz Yisrael. They have 1 day. Not Rosh Hashanah. They have 2 days because it's called a Yom HaRichta. It's 1 long day. And as I've told you, the Chassam Sofer even used to compare the 2nd day of Shavuos, because he said, we know the first day of Shavuos, it's 50 days after Pesach. So what do you mean Sveika D'Yoima? There is no Sveika D'Yoima. But it is for different reasons, because we do Pesach and Sukkot, so therefore it's the Sholosh Regolim. So we also have the extra day then. But he says it's much higher than the 2nd day, like a regular Sveika D'Yoima Yom Tov Shel Golus of Chutzula Oris, that we have a 2nd day. But I'm not talking about Shavuos now. What I'm talking about is that the Arizal says the first day is Keneged the Ruchnius. A person should daven for his Ruchnius of the year. And the 2nd day, well, the first day is Keneged Leah, and the 2nd day is Keneged Rachel, which is connected the Gashmias of a person, that he should have Parnasa, because what is the Gashmias of a Yid? It's Ruchnias. What does a Yid do with his money? He buys a sukkah, buys a lulav and esrog, pays for matzah, pays tuition, talis, tefillin, tzitzis. His money goes for kodesh kadoshim. So it's a geder of ruchnias, but it's still, we're in an oilam of gashmias, and you need money to buy them. So therefore, the second day we daven for that. But Yom Kippur is not Yom Hadin like Rosh Hashanah is, and it's a very strange mix because it's a Yom Tiv. We make Kiddush, we have a Suda, and you can't say Vidui on Rosh Hashanah. It's a Yom Tiv, and Yom Kippur is a Yom Tiv also, but it's a Yom Tiv in a different category completely, and that's why the Gemara of Yom Kippur is called Yuma, which means day. Which day? You see, Pesach is called Psachim, the Gemara. Sukkah is called Sukkos. Rosh Hashanah is called Rosh Hashanah. But Yom Kippur is called Yuma, the day. A heavenly day that we can't pinpoint. And the Mekatrigim, the Sultan, can't pinpoint either. He has no rishus because he doesn't even know where the day is and what it is. Yom Kippur, but Yom Kippur is a day of cleansing. We come out pure and happy, and even though there's the minig to have a big Suda Motso Yom Kippur, it's not like other fast days that some people say, yeah, I have a tea and a piece of cake, that's how I break my fast. Yom Kippur, Motso Yom Kippur, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to make a big Suda with neiros, with chalas, with meat or fish, all of these things. It's a Suda. Keneged Motso Yom Kippur, which we're going to talk about how big it is. But why should we have a Suda? How does a person know that his slate was wiped clean? What should he be so happy about? How does he know how he was judged and it was decided? But the answer is we're maminim b'nei maminim, and even if in the schus of himself he can't make the mark, but in the schus of Klal Yisrael, we are a Klal Yisrael which is cleansed and purified and uplifted on Yom Kippur. So if that's the case, wouldn't we want to have Yom Kippur before Rosh Hashanah? Because Rosh Hashanah, we're being judged, we're being looked at. Basher Husham. What are you now? Did you do the tshuva? Are you worthy of a good next year? Or chas v'sholom not? So if that's the case, and it's so severe, like the Arizal says, when we say in Hoshanas, Sukkos, and we go around the bima, one of the stanzas is Hoshana Mishalos Sha'os. And the Arizal says, what does that mean? Save us from the 3 hours. Which 3 hours? So the Arizal tells us that it is the first 3 hours of Rosh Hashanah from Shkia until the next 3 hours, that every minute, every Yid is being looked at with a magnifying glass on everything he thinks, he says, and he does. And that, the Arizal says, is the strongest moments of the din that come on a person. Nebuch. I mean, Nebuch, that's what Rosh Hashanah is. So, he says, but a person, even though he has to be happy because it's Yom Tov, but it's a Yom Adin, and he realizes that he, his family, his neighbors, his Klal Yisrael, I mean, Klal Yisrael's not under siege. Look at the bombings every single day, the grenades from Iran and from the Hezbollah, and our people are not under siege. Why? Because we're sitting comfortably. So we have a lot to ask for and hope for, and luckily, as the Arizal and others explain, The mitzvah of Tekiyas Shofar is the grenade that we throw back, because we know realistically that we have a bushel basket or many bushel baskets of Averis. And it's those Averis who speak up. This guy's asking for good health. He's asking for nachas. He's asking for lots of Why? Why should we give it to him? I mean, when the Yidden left Mitzrayim, the Sar Shel Yam said, why in the world should I split the sea? Halolu ovdei avodah zarah, halolu ovdei avodah. In other words, we have mekatrigim every day of our life. When we want to do a mitzvah, we say Vihi Noyam, explains the Arizal, because that one pasuk, Vihi Noyam Hashem Elokeinu, Aleinu Masa Yadenu Konanu, Aleinu Masa Yadenu Konaneu, is a protective shield that those mekatrigim cannot get near you while you want to light the Chanukah Lech, when you want to take the matzah and eat it and be Mekayim, the mitzvahs aseh d'oraisa and the matzahs keneged emuna, that a Yid could infuse and could drench his neshama with emuna through the eating of matzah, the first night of Pesach. The second night, the Zohar Kodesh says, is meichla diasvasa. It's a medicine. It is something that can heal a person. And that's why by many tzaddikim, as I've said to you years ago, that many tzaddikim, when they finished eating their matzah, the Hasidim, ad hayom hazeh, gather the pieces, the little, and they put it into the wine, not on Pesach, because many people have a hiddur of gebroks. They don't put a matzah into wine. But right after Yom Tov, and the famous story with the Balatanya, that there was a plague in a city where he lived in Russia, and it was freezing outside, like 20 degrees below zero, and there was a plague. People were dying left and right. And he told them to come. They should be brought on their beds. They were sick with fever, and they were brought to the Beis HaMedrash, and the anti-Hasidim said, oh, he's a rotzeach. In 20 below zero weather, he's taking people with 103 fever into that cold to be carried into the... And when they got there, no one died, and he had everyone given to drink from the wine that had the matzah from the second day of Pesach put into it, and not one of the person in that group, in that shul that night, died, and subsequently he returned back to good health. So the reason that I'm bringing this out is that when we have a stack of antagonists against us, it's the Tekiyas Shofar that decimates them. So you'll ask me, this year, is the first day of Rosh Hashanah is Shabbos, and we do not blow shofar on Shabbos. So does that mean that we are leaving Klal Yisrael unshielded, unprotected, with no Tekiyas Shofar? So as all the tzaddikim explained 2,000 years ago, and 1,000 years ago, and 100 years ago, that the koyach of Shabbos, the power of Shabbos, has such ingredients in it that it replaces all the ingredients of Tekiyas Shofar. So every Yid is immersed in the Shabbos, doesn't need the Tekiyas Shofar to get to the point of protection from everything. And that's why Tekiyas Shofar is, as they all write, the single most important item of Rosh Hashanah. Now the second and third items is Tefillah and Tillim. And if indeed it's such a Yom Hadin, why do we go home to the Seudah? We should, okay, it's Yom Tov, 15 minutes, make Kiddush, make Hamotzi, take a bite and run right back to Shul. But the answer is that the Seudos that we have Shabbos and Yom Tov, Rosh Hashanah included, are equal to the Tefillah and the Tillim. And that's why we have we have Su'udos for 2 hours for an hour and a half, and many homes have the minig. There's 4 prokim in Rosh Hashanah, Masechtas Rosh Hashanah, that they learn by each Suda of the 4 Sudas on Rosh Hashanah, a different parak of Mishnayos of Rosh Hashanah. And it says Mishnayos is Metayer and Mezachich the Neshama. That's why people, after someone's nifter, they learn so much Mishnayos, because that's Metayer, the Neshama of the nifter, that it's having the most powerful effect. And that's why the oisius, the letters of the word Mishnah, is Neshama. If you change around, transpose the order of the letters. So the point is that the minhagim that we have, to give you an example, on Rosh Hashanah, somebody may, let's say, sitting at the table, think, oh, it's a cute thing. We take some apple and we dip it in the honey and the kids enjoy it and it looks nice. We want a sweet year, so we're dipping in the honey. All the brachas from heaven come down through the Sdeat HaPuchim, the apple orchard. It's called, there's no physical apples in heaven, but it's called an apple orchard. And we sing about it on Shabbos. Dachakal Tapuchin Kadishin, the holy apples. That's why some rebbes take apples and throw it out to the tzibur during their Suda. And because an apple is a borei pri ha'etz, and we could just as well take an orange or a pear. That's borei pri ha'etz also. But no one in New Zealand or in Alaska or in Eretz Yisrael or London or America take Rosh Hashanah by night a pear to dip in the honey. We only take apples. Because since tapuach is an apple, and it's from the Steat Tapuchim that they open up the treasure chest. And while we're dipping in, they're opening up the treasure chest with the key, because a key that fits into the lock but does not have the proper notches doesn't open the lock. But when you have the notches correct and the key is correct, then the treasure chest will open and everything comes flowing down. And when we take the head of a fish, we take the apple and we dip it in the honey, and everything else that we have, and I could go on for 2 hours with all this simonim, that there are deep, deep inyonim in this, and we do it on Rosh Hashanah as part of our avodah. We're not stopping davening and going out to a picnic Sunday afternoon to enjoy. Now we go home to enjoy because you're supposed to, on Yom Tov, that's the side of Rosh Hashanah, that you're supposed to have delicious foods, you're supposed to have Yom Tov Dikama Cholim. But when we do these minhagim and we elevate the level of the entire Suda, you know, there was a Yochanan Kohen Gadol who served as a Kohen Gadol, the Gemara says, 80 years. V'libsof na'aseh tzeduki. And at the end, he became a Reform rabbi. Now, when we say 80 years, that he was a Kohen Gadol, that means that he went into the Kodesh Kodashim 80 years and came out every time alive. We know there were many Kohanim Gedolim that didn't. They had one Machshava Zara, they died, and that's why they had a rope around their foot, because no one could go into the Kodesh Kodashim to take out their body. They had to pull them out from there. But this Yochanan was 80 years a Kohen Gadol, went in and out of the Kodesh Kodashim, and at the end of the story, he became Nebuch and Apikoris, a Reform rabbi. How b'mitzias could that happen? So the Arizal says, because tzaddikim go into the fish. That's why we have the minhag so much on our Yom Tiv or Shabbos Seudos, that fish is part and parcel of it. If someone is allergic or can't eat it, of course he's exempt. It's not a chiyuv to eat fish. But 99% of Klal Yisrael Shabbos has herring, shalosh shudas, gefilte fish, a mixture of different fishes. I mean, fish is a staple. It's a very major item in the seudos, the meals and the dinners that are designed and served for Yom Tov and for Shabbos. So the Arizal says tzaddikim go into the fish, and the Rishonim go into the vegetables. Now, when you make a bracha before, you limit the power of the rasha in the food. You make the bracha Rishon and the bracha Achrona, you're okay. But the Arizal says that this Yochanan Kohen Gadol, took a vegetable and he was thinking about something else, and for his madrega, he had to think of how you're mala all the rishoim inside the food, and he didn't do it, and they pulled him down. So says the Arizal. So the point I just want to bring out is that our seudos and our minhagim of what we do during seudos does not comprise a picnic in the park or just a good dinner to enjoy. It's kodesh kedoshim, like the words of Tilim and like the words of Tefillah. Now, I want to say to you that I didn't answer the question of why we don't have Yom Kippur before Rosh Hashanah. Forgive me, I get sometimes a little bit distant. So, and the answer is that even though it would be technically nicer to be all clean and then be judged Rosh Hashanah, but nevertheless, there is a component of this, the Chazal say, that Yom Kippur, if we would have it first and then come into Rosh Hashanah, we would be reflecting, because now we're on the good side of the fence after Yom Kippur, but we would be reflecting on all the bad that we did. Because now that we're clean, it's like a person comes out of an accident. Whew, I almost was hit by that car. It was like, and that person would bring himself to a hopelessness state, as we spoke about before. And rather than, as many of us would think, you just should be very happy that you're clean now, and you feel more confident in the judgment to be able to be judged. You at least stand a better chance now that you're clean. But the Chazal said that the frame of mind of a person, when he becomes exempt, can pull him back into a place that's where sometimes like something very good happens to the person. A person who can handle it thrives with it. A person who can't handle it ends up worse off than he was before. And that's what they say. If we had Yom Kippur before Rosh Hashanah, that would be the state of our mind coming into that Rosh Hashanah. So I want to express one more item to you, and that is that the Chazal say, the Gemara says, that Rosh Hashanah nifkedu Sarah, Rachel, and Chana. All three had trouble giving birth. And they were all answered on Rosh Hashanah. And some of the Meforshim point out something that is a very important message for us. Because it says that why was it that they were in general given the opportunity to be expecting? Because they davened for somebody else. Sarah and Avram davened for Avimelech. After Sarah was in Avimelech's house, everyone stopped giving birth, could not become pregnant, could not expect, and they davened for him as part of their understanding. Let her go, everything will be fine. And they davened and everything was fine. But they Avram and Sarah, davened for someone else, and that's schus, that it was recognized it came from them, she expected. Rachel was out to cover the humiliation. I mean, if she ended up marrying Yaakov that night, Leah was home crying. Okay, now I'm going to fall to Esav. She got Yaakov and I'm going to get Esav. And because Rachel felt so bad for her and hid under the bed. And when Yaakov talked to Leah, who he was with, Rachel answered, so he shouldn't catch that it's a different voice. And Rachel at that time, the Medrash thought that that's her life is given up. She will never marry. Her Basherta was Yaakov, but for someone else, for her sister Leah, she was ready to stay unmarried. As it is, Rachel was nifter, she was only 36, and Leah was 45 when they were nifter. But Rachel was ready to give up having children, and she wasn't going to have children, but she was worried about her sister and her sister's humiliation and degradation. She had Yosef and Binyamin. And Chana went to even another extreme. She said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want a child, but I'm giving him over to you. He will be Kodesh, Kadoshim his whole life. Shmuel HaNavi's 52 years was Kodesh, Kadoshim LaShem. He served HaKadosh Baruch Hu every second of his life. So that, because of their machshava, and they were makabel on themselves for someone else, all three of them gave birth on Rosh Hashanah because it happened. Either on Rosh Hashanah, some say it was Aser Smei, whatever, but it happened and it was the result of their concern for somebody else. So when we do something for somebody else, we are not benefiting the other person as much as we are benefiting ourselves. And that we have the ability and the plus to be able to uplift, to encourage, to put a smile, to bring into the realm of happiness people with ourselves, mustering the strength and the willingness and the desire to do so and to get there. And let's not forget that when Chana, who had a sister, and her sister, it says that she had 10 children, the sister. And every time she gave birth, she was needling Chana. And the Gemara says openly, it was L'Shem Shemayim. She was doing to make Chana miserable so she should cry her heart out. Because she felt that that's what she was missing to have a child. So she was doing it l'shem shamayim. But it says that she, and the Gemara says, she brought tears. She did this to Chana. So every time that Chana cried, another child died of her sister. All 10 died because she did it 10 times. So we can sometimes talk ourselves into, oh, I mean it only for the other person's good. Oh, I mean this, I mean that. But causing someone tsar, pain and grief, is something that if in the new year we are just mahadir, most with that, we should do the other things. Most with that, we've made a remarkable, marvelous achievement etched into the essence of time and of the new year. So we're going to talk next week more about Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur the next week, probably a little more, but we'll go into the Inyanim and how the davening is set up to reflect in Shemayim. And as a matter of fact, this Motzoi Shabbos is Slichas. And one would think that the davening on Rosh Hashanah is higher than Slichas. I mean, the Sfardim say Slichas a whole elo. And you can pick up a Sfardi on the street, or you can pick an Ashkenaz next week when we're in the week of, and ask, did you miss any day of Slichas? And if they're honest, many times they say, yes, I did miss. I slept through, I was busy watching this, I was busy doing that, and I was too tired for Slichas, I couldn't get it in that day, this day, that. Do you know that the Mekubalim say that whereas the Shemona Esrei that we say goes into the world of Atzilus, however, the whole davening does not reach Atzilus. It reaches, even on Rosh Hashanah, it reaches only the world of Bria, which is one before Atzilus. But that every word of Slichas goes only into Atzilus. How big? Because that's how we are allowed to insert so many times Hashem Keil Rachum, which is higher than Atzilus. It's the Olam HaKeser. So we are given diamonds with opportunities. Let's magnify and maximize the effectiveness of how we deal with the words of davening and the words of Atzilus. A good gebenched, lebedik, wonderful Shana Tova Umesuka.